In a small chapel tucked away in the suburbs of Boston, the air hung heavy, as if each breath carried the weight of unspoken words. Claire Thompson stood before the altar, her trembling hands clutching a bouquet of carnations, their delicate petals whispering of a tender world she had lost. They were soft to the point of heartbreak, a stark contrast to the icy chill of the stone room where moonlight slipped through stained glass windows. Shimmering patches of silvery blue danced across the floor, tracing fractured patterns, much like her heart in that moment. The light was beautiful, yet cold, offering no warmth to soothe the trembling in her chest. Claire, a young woman who once dreamed of a love as radiant as fairy tales, now felt like a bird trapped in a gilded cage, her wings clipped by a vow she never wished to make. All right, before you settle in, take a sec to like the video and subscribe, but only if you're genuinely vibing with what I'm putting out here. And drop a comment below letting me know where you're watching from and what time it is for you. It's always a thrill to see who's joining us from all corners of the globe. Her heart pounded fiercely, each beat a silent cry of defiance. She stood there, draped in a simple white wedding gown, not one she had chosen, but one chosen for her, just as her life had been decided for her now. The dress rustled faintly as she shifted, the soft sound echoing in the oppressive silence, a reminder of her presence in a ritual that didn't belong to her. She longed to scream, to tear off the fragile veil covering her head and flee into the night, where the moonlight might shelter her. But she couldn't. In her mind, her father Robert's voice echoed from that morning, hoarse and desperate. "You have to do this, Claire. For the family." Those words coiled around her heart like a rope, pulling her into this moment, where she stood before the altar, bound by duty and honor. A few steps away, her father stood silent, his head bowed low, his once proud shoulders now slumped under the burden of failure. Robert Thompson, a businessman who had once commanded Boston's respect, was now a mere shadow of himself, his eyes clouded with shame and pain. He had traded his daughter's future to save his crumbling company, a choice Claire knew would scar him forever. Looking at him, she felt a tidal wave of conflicting emotions surge within her. Anger at being sacrificed, yet a deep love for the man who had once been her entire world. She thought of her mother, Elizabeth, who had taught her about family honor before cancer stole her away. "Honor is something no one can take from you," her mother had said, her voice frail but resolute. Those words were now the tiny flame keeping Claire upright, even as she felt herself sinking. Beside her, Alexander Knight stood like a statue, exuding a cold authority in his perfectly tailored black suit. He was the man who had agreed to save her family, but at a cruel price. Her. His deep blue eyes stared straight ahead, sharp as ice, never once meeting hers, as if she were a mere detail in his flawless portrait. His presence was like a winter gust, making her shiver not from cold, but from the ruthless distance he radiated. Claire's heart tightened, not with love, but with a burning defiance flaring in her chest. She was not a wife, not a beloved. She was a piece in a transaction, a pawn in the chess game Alexander played with merciless precision. The priest's voice droned steadily, each word a hammer driving nails into Claire's fate. The vows were dry, devoid of emotion, more like clauses in a business contract than promises of love. There were no smiles, no applause, no joyful music to mark what should have been a sacred moment. In the chapel, only a handful of witnesses sat sparsely: her younger brother Michael, a few distant relatives, and Alexander's lawyer, who watched with the cold detachment of someone finalizing a deal. Claire felt stripped bare under their gazes, not because she stood at the altar, but because she was losing herself. She gripped the carnations tightly, her trembling fingers brushing the soft petals, seeking solace in their fragility. The pearl necklace around her throat, her mother's final gift, felt cool against her skin, a reminder of the strength her mother had instilled in her. Claire closed her eyes, trying to summon the image of her mother's gentle smile, her frail but loving voice. "Always uphold the family's honor, Claire." Those words were the breeze keeping her small flame alive, though it flickered in the storm of reality. When the priest asked for her response, her voice was barely a whisper. "I do." The words tasting like ash on her tongue. Alexander answered with a curt reply, devoid of feeling, as if he were signing a check. As they turned to face the sparse rows of seats, Claire caught Michael's gaze. Her younger brother, who had always protected her despite being smaller, looked at her with a mix of anger and helplessness. She knew he wanted to rush forward, to pull her from this nightmare, but he remained seated, his hands clenched tight, his eyes screaming words he couldn't voice. Claire offered a faint smile, a silent promise that she would be okay, though her heart bled. The moonlight streaming through the window grew brighter, the full moon hanging low, its silver glow both beautiful and cruel, a silent witness to her sacrifice. As they stepped out of the chapel, Claire felt a tear roll down her cheek, but she quickly wiped it away, determined not to let Alexander see her vulnerability. Deep within her, a spark of defiance still smoldered, vowing that she would find a way to survive, no matter how fiercely fate tried to crush her. When the priest's voice rang out, proclaiming Claire Thompson and Alexander Knight husband and wife, the air in the small chapel on the outskirts of Boston seemed to freeze solid. Those words carried no joy, no sanctity. They felt like a final verdict, locking Claire into a fate she had never chosen. She stood there, the bouquet of carnations in her hands now heavy, as if the fragile petals were desperately clinging to the fading hope within her heart. As Alexander's hand closed around hers, his grip held no trace of love's warmth. It was cold, rigid, a silent warning that she now belonged to him, not as a wife, but as a piece in a meticulously calculated transaction. Claire's heart pounded fiercely, each beat a mute cry of defiance, a scream stifled in her chest. She pulled her hand away swiftly, as if his touch might sear her, but the truth was it left an invisible burn, etching into her soul the sensation of captivity. She lifted her head, striving to steady her gaze, but the moonlight streaming through the stained glass windows seemed to mock her. Its silver glow shattered across the stone floor, beautiful yet cruel, as if fate itself were laughing at her dreams of freedom. In that moment, Claire felt like a caged bird, her wings clipped by the vows she had just uttered. She glanced toward the sparse rows of seats, where her younger brother Michael sat in silence. His gaze, sharp and blazing with anger, seemed to pierce the invisible walls holding her captive. Michael, her steadfast protector, who had once fought neighborhood kids to defend her, could now only sit there, his hands clenched so tightly they turned pale, his eyes burning with helplessness. Catching his look, Claire's heart twisted in agony. She offered a faint smile, a small gesture heavy with a silent promise. "I'll be okay, Michael. I have to be." But deep within, she didn't believe that promise. It was merely a fragile shield to hide the fear roaring inside her. Stepping out of the chapel, the biting night air wrapped around her, but the full moon hanging low in the sky shone brilliantly, a silent witness to her sacrifice. Its silver light illuminated the path to the sleek black car awaiting them, a luxurious machine as cold as the man beside her. Claire glanced back at the chapel, where her dreams of a free life lay abandoned, like shards of a once vivid painting. A single tear rolled silently down her cheek, hot and painful, but she quickly wiped it away with the back of her hand, resolved not to let Alexander glimpse even a hint of her vulnerability. She couldn't allow him, the man who had turned her into a bargaining chip, to see her heart breaking. Within her, a spark of defiance still smoldered, small but resilient, a silent vow that she would not let herself be destroyed. Inside the glossy black car, the cramped space seemed to amplify the suffocation. Alexander sat beside her, silent, his deep blue eyes fixed on the window, as if she didn't exist. His silence was a steel wall, blocking any hope of connection. But then, unexpectedly, his voice broke through, low and cold as stone. "You'll get used to this." Those words struck like a blade, sharp and merciless, slicing into Claire's pride. She turned to him, her eyes narrowing, the fire within her flaring fiercely. For a fleeting moment, she wanted to scream at him, to force him to face the pain he was inflicting. But she held back, her voice cutting yet composed. "Get used to being sold like that? Or married to a man who won't even look at me?" Her words hung in the air, a challenge, and she caught a flicker of surprise in Alexander's eyes, as if he hadn't expected her defiance. But his icy mask quickly returned, and he replied, his voice sharp as a knife. "Your father was the one who sold you, not me." Those words hit Claire like a blow to the chest, stealing her breath. She turned away, staring out the window where city lights flashed by like falling stars. The truth in Alexander's words stung more than anything she had ever felt, not because he was right, but because they laid bare the wounds she had tried to conceal. Her father, the man she loved and respected, had traded her future to save himself. She thought of her mother, of the lessons of honor Elizabeth had imparted, of the pearl necklace now resting coldly against her skin. "Honor is something no one can take away," her mother had said, but now Claire felt it being torn apart, piece by piece. Yet even in that pain, she sensed a new strength rising within her. She clutched the pearl necklace, her trembling fingers seeking solace in her mother's memory. Alexander might see her as part of a deal, but she would not let him define her. She would not let anyone break her. As the car glided through Boston's shimmering streets, the moonlight still hung high, watching over her like a silent companion. Claire drew a deep breath, her heart still aching, but the fire within her burned brighter now. She was a prisoner of honor, bound by her vow to her family, but she would find a way to survive. She had to, not just for her father, for Michael, but for herself, for the woman she still hoped to become. Alexander Knight's penthouse, perched in the heart of Boston, was a masterpiece of icy opulence, where every detail radiated power and coldness. Floor-to-ceiling glass windows opened to a glittering cityscape, urban lights twinkling like falling stars, but their beauty failed to touch Claire Thompson's heart. It was like a flawless painting, devoid of soul, offering no solace for the emotional storm raging in her chest. The glossy, dark hardwood floor reflected moonlight, abstract paintings hung on the walls like silent sentinels, and minimalist furniture in shades of gray and black created a space that was striking yet so frigid it sent shivers through Claire. This was not a home. It was a cage, gilded with wealth, but unable to mask the emptiness within. Claire stepped into the penthouse, her feet heavy as if shackled by her new reality. Alexander, rigid in his impeccable black suit, pointed toward the hallway, his voice flat and emotionless. "You'll stay in the guest room." Not a glance, not an explanation, as if she were merely an object arranged in his tightly controlled world. His words, curt and cold, sliced deep into Claire's pride, a stark reminder of her place. Not a wife, but a clause in his contract. She nodded, not out of agreement, but because exhaustion sapped her will to resist. Each step she took in the direction he indicated echoed on the wooden floor, like a fateful drumbeat, drawing her deeper into this lavish prison. The guest room appeared before Claire, as cold and lifeless as the rest of the penthouse. A large bed draped in pristine white linens dominated the center, like an ornate tomb. A solitary chair by the window and a sleek wardrobe were the only furnishings, but they offered no sense of welcome. Claire closed the door, the soft click of the latch sounding like a lock sealing her into an alien world. She leaned against the cool wall, her breath coming in rapid gasps, as if the air in this room were too thin to sustain her. Reality crashed over her like a wave, drowning her in the bitter truth. She was a stranger in the home of a man who saw her as nothing more than an obligation. Her heart pounded, each beat a reminder of the sacrifice she had made, not for love, but for family honor. Collapsing onto the bed, Claire felt the weight of her wedding dress clinging to her, a symbol of her captivity. She pulled a pale blue shawl from her small bag, the final gift from her mother Elizabeth, who had knitted it in her last days, when cancer had drained her strength. The uneven stitches, trembling from her mother's frail hands, were now Claire's most treasured possession. She wrapped the shawl around her shoulders, inhaling the faded lavender scent woven into the wool, as if it could transport her back to warmer days when her mother was alive, when her family was whole. In her memory, her mother's voice echoed, weak but resolute. "You are stronger than you know, Claire." Those words were a small flame, flickering but unextinguished, glowing in the darkness of the despair enveloping her. Claire clutched the pearl necklace around her throat. Another final gift from her mother. The cool beads under her fingertips a lifeline amid the emotional tempest. She closed her eyes, trying to summon her mother's gentle smile, her eyes brimming with love and faith. But the image only sharpened the ache in her heart, as she realized how far she had drifted from the dreams she once cherished. She wanted to weep, to let tears spill over and wash away the pain, but she held them back. No, she would not let Alexander see her crumble, even if he wasn't in the room. She would not let the man who viewed her as a contractual term witness her weakness. Within her, a defiant flame burned, small but unyielding, whispering that she still had the strength to fight. Moonlight flooded through the window, casting a silver glow over the room, like a silent companion. Claire rose, crossing to the window and pressing her hand against the frigid glass. Outside, Boston sprawled before her, sparkling like a sea of stars, but its beauty only deepened her loneliness. Her reflection in the glass, a woman in a wedding dress not her own, seemed like a stranger, a shadow of the Claire she once knew. She recalled days of freedom, mornings filled with laughter alongside her brother Michael, dreams of a love rooted in truth. All that had been replaced by this gilded cage, where every corner reminded her of her sacrifice. Yet even in that solitude, Claire sensed a faint spark of hope. She was not merely Alexander's prisoner, nor a captive of family honor. She was Elizabeth's daughter, taught that true strength lay in the heart. She brushed her fingers over the pearl necklace, its coolness a promise that she would find a way to endure. No matter how cold this penthouse, no matter how distant Alexander, she would not let herself be broken. The moonlight outside still shone, a silent witness to her resolve, and Claire knew she would fight, not just for her family but for herself. Late at night in Alexander Knight's penthouse, the darkness seemed alive, swallowing every sound except the relentless thumping of Claire Thompson's heart in her chest. She lay on the cold bed in the guest room, her mother's shawl draped around her shoulders, but its fragile comfort couldn't quell the emotional tempest roaring within her. A faint sound, like a drawer softly closing, echoed from somewhere in the penthouse, slicing through her thoughts. Curiosity overpowered her exhaustion, igniting a small flame amidst her weariness. Claire sat up, her bare feet silently touching the hard wooden floor, and she stepped out of the room, drawn to the sound like a lost ship seeking a lighthouse. The noise guided her to the slightly ajar door of Alexander's study, a place she had never dared to enter. But now, the urge to understand the man who had bound her to this marriage was stronger than any fear. The study emerged under the dim glow of a single desk lamp, casting a pale yellow light, like a dying candle. Bookshelves lined with leather-bound volumes, a glossy wooden desk, and framed awards on the walls, all exuded Alexander's cold authority. But Claire's gaze was drawn to a small wooden box on the desk, its lid slightly open, as if whispering an invitation to uncover the secrets within. Her heart pounded, each beat a warning, but she couldn't stop herself. She opened the box, her trembling hands fearing they might awaken a sleeping beast. Inside lay a stack of old letters, tied with a faded red ribbon, their yellowed edges heavy with the weight of time. The top letter, written in Alexander's sharp, angular handwriting, chilled her to the bone. The Thompson family took everything from me. I will never forgive. Those words struck like a dagger, piercing Claire's heart, stealing her breath. She read on, each line a fragment of a horrifying truth. Her father, Robert, had once been a business partner of Alexander's father, and a failed deal had plunged the Knight family into ruin. Alexander's mother, consumed by stress and grief, had died soon after, and he blamed her father, his greed, for every loss. This marriage, which Claire had believed was the price to save her family, now revealed itself as a meticulously crafted act of vengeance. She was not a wife, not a savior. She was a weapon, a means for Alexander to punish the Thompsons. The letter trembled in her hands, as if the paper itself feared the truth it bore. Claire felt the blood drain from her face, her heart constricting, as if the world were collapsing beneath her feet. A sudden sound, heavy footsteps, jolted Claire, the letter nearly slipping from her grasp. Alexander stood in the doorway, his deep blue eyes blazing with fury, like a storm about to unleash. He surged forward, snatching the letter with such force that she staggered back, his voice roaring, sharp as a blade. "You had no right!" But Claire didn't retreat. Rage erupted within her, hot and fierce, overpowering her fear. She met his gaze, her heart pounding, yet her voice was steady as she confronted him. "You lied to me. This marriage was to punish my family, wasn't it?" Her words were aflame, challenging the cold wall Alexander had built. He gripped the letter tightly, his jaw clenched so hard she could see the veins bulging in his hand. Then he spoke, his voice trembling with a deep, pained emotion. "Do you think I wanted this? Your father destroyed my family. My mother died because of him. I had no choice." His words were another blade, cutting deep into Claire's heart. But this time, she glimpsed a crack in his icy facade. In his eyes, a fleeting shadow of pain revealed a boy who had lost his mother, a man imprisoned by the weight of his past. She wanted to scream, to force him to face the hurt he was inflicting on her, but she stood frozen, her heart aching, torn between fury and an unwanted pang of empathy. She turned away, leaving the study, each step heavy with the burden of the truth she had uncovered. Moonlight streamed through the hallway window, its silver glow gentle yet merciless, a silent witness to the storm within her. Back in her room, Claire collapsed onto the bed, her mother's shawl still wrapped around her shoulders, a fragile shield against the truth crushing her. She clutched her pearl necklace, her fingers gliding over its cool surface, seeking solace in her mother's memory. "You are stronger than you know," her mother had said, and now Claire clung to those words like a lifeline. She was not merely a victim of Alexander's revenge. She was Elizabeth's daughter, Michael's sister, a woman carrying an unquenchable fire within. No matter how painful the truth, no matter how Alexander tried to punish her for her father's sins, Claire vowed he would not destroy her. The moonlight outside still shone, bathing the room in a serene glow, and in that light, Claire felt a new spark of resolve, ready to face whatever secrets fate would unveil next. The charity gala at the Boston Harbor Hotel shimmered like a rare jewel, where light from crystal chandeliers danced across the polished wooden floor, reflecting the extravagance of Boston's elite. But for Claire Thompson, the room was nothing more than a meticulously staged theater, where every smile, every handshake, concealed a hidden agenda. She stood at the edge of the ballroom, clad in an emerald green gown chosen by Alexander Knight, the fabric clinging to her body like a reminder that she no longer belonged to herself. The deep, vibrant green accentuated her eyes, but it also made her feel like an ornament, beautiful, yet soulless, placed beside Alexander to complete his portrait of power. As she emerged from her room before the gala, his gaze flickered over her, and his voice, unexpectedly husky, whispered, "It suits your eyes." Those brief words sent her heart stumbling, an uninvited spark of warmth seeping into her chest, leaving her torn between anger and a feeling she dared not name. In the ballroom, Alexander moved like a king, each step radiating confidence and authority. He shook hands, exchanged polished smiles with the city's power brokers, his face a perfect mask, concealing the secrets Claire had uncovered in his study. She stood silently on the sidelines, her hands clenched tightly, her heart weighed down by the truth of their marriage, a vengeful scheme to punish her family. Each glance from the crowd felt like a needle, piercing her pride, reminding her she didn't belong in this world. She yearned to flee, to tear off the lavish gown and vanish into the night, but she remained rooted, bound by family honor and the weight of onlookers' eyes. The pearl necklace around her throat, her mother's final gift, was her only anchor, cool beneath her fingertips, whispering that she could still be strong. But then, like a blade slicing through the stillness, a headline flashed on a nearby screen, its words sharp as a knife. "Thompson family linked to Knight's downfall. Decade-old secret exposed." The room erupted in whispers, eyes turning toward Claire like she was a beast trapped in a glass cage. She felt the blood drain from her face, her breath catching in her chest. The story detailed her father's role in the financial collapse of Alexander's family, accusations of greed and betrayal cutting into her heart like daggers. She stood there, as if stripped bare before the crowd, shame and pain swelling like a wave, threatening to drown her. She wanted to scream, to deny the lies, but her feet felt nailed to the floor, her heart trembling before the exposed truth. Her family had caused Alexander pain, and she was the price to be paid. The humiliation became unbearable when Victor Grayson, Alexander's rival, approached, his smile as sharp as a blade, his eyes glinting with malice. He stood before her, his voice low but loud enough for those nearby to hear, mocking her as a gold digger from a deceitful family. His words were a slap, her cheeks burning, her hands trembling as her nails dug into her palms. In that moment, Claire wanted to retort, to defend her honor, but the words caught in her throat, choked by shame and fear. She stood there like a shattered statue, her heart pounding, torn between rage and helplessness. But then, like a sudden gust, Alexander appeared at her side, his presence powerful and commanding. He took her hand, his grip firm but not painful, a silent declaration that she was his. His voice, low and dangerous, issued a warning to Victor. "She's my wife. One more word, Victor, and you'll regret it." His words silenced the room, tension crackling like electricity, and Claire, though still angry with him, felt a flicker of warmth from his grip, a protective act that left her heart in disarray. His hand, though cold as his demeanor, brought an odd sensation, like an anchor in the storm. Claire looked at him, searching for a trace of the man behind the mask of power, but his eyes remained locked on Victor, revealing nothing. She felt torn, part of her wanting to believe his actions stemmed from care, another part reminding her he was the one who bound her to this marriage for revenge. The truth about her family's past, now laid bare to the world, left her feeling adrift, a boat tossed in a raging sea. She clutched the pearl necklace, her fingers gliding over its cool surface, drawing strength from her mother's memory. "You are stronger than you think," her mother had said, and Claire clung to those words, resolved not to let this shame define her. As Victor stepped back, his smile fading, Claire sensed a faint glimmer of hope amid the chaos. She glanced at Alexander's hand still holding hers, a silent promise that she wasn't entirely alone. She stood there, beneath the glittering chandeliers, the crowd's gazes still lingering. But within her, a resilient flame burned brighter. She would not let Victor Alexander or anyone break her. The moonlight outside, streaming through the ballroom windows, shone as a silent witness to her struggle, and Claire knew she would keep fighting. For her family, for her honor, and for herself. Dear audience, grab a glass of water, take a moment to relax, and keep listening to the story. The twists are still to come, and please drop a comment below letting me know where you're watching from and what time it is for you. It's always a joy to see who's joining us from around the world. Drop a 1 in the comments if you find this story gripping, so we can keep bringing you more captivating tales. The news of Claire Thompson's father's stroke hit like a tsunami, sweeping her away from the glittering facade of the gala at the Boston Harbor Hotel and hurling her into the sterile hospital corridor, where the sharp scent of antiseptic and the pale white light dominated every sense. She sat by her father's bedside, his frail hand resting weakly in hers, the veins beneath his thin skin mapping years of hardship. Robert Thompson, the man who had once been the pillar of her family, now appeared small, fragile, like a brittle autumn leaf before a gust of wind. Claire gripped his hand tightly, her heart heavy with a tangled web of emotions. Anger at him for pushing her into marriage with Alexander Knight, guilt for having resented him, and above all, a profound love, an unquenchable flame tested by his mistakes. Watching him lie there, his breathing shallow, she longed for him to open his eyes, to hear his gravelly voice again, even just once more. She wanted to tell him she forgave him, that she needed him, but the words caught in her throat, stifled by the fear of losing the last link to her happier days. The hospital corridor was cold, the white fluorescent lights casting a harsh glow, a cruel reminder of life's fragility. Claire sat there, the emerald green gown from the gala now crumpled, a symbol of the opulence shattered by reality. The pearl necklace around her neck, her mother's gift, felt cool beneath her fingertips, her only anchor in the storm of emotions. She thought of her mother, Elizabeth, who had taught her about love and honor, and now, with her father lying motionless, she felt her mother's absence like an unfillable void. She had been angry at her father for trading her future, but now, seeing him so frail, she wanted to fall to her knees and beg him to live. Pain surged in her chest, a wave threatening to drown her, but she clung to the pearl necklace, whispering to herself her mother's words, "You are stronger than you think." A soft but resolute sound of footsteps broke through Claire's thoughts, making her look up, her heart pounding with surprise. Alexander stood at the end of the corridor, his black suit disheveled, his hair tousled, and his deep blue eyes for the first time, glinting with concern rather than their usual coldness. His presence unsettled her, like a piece that didn't fit in her tapestry of grief. He didn't belong here, in this private moment, yet there he was, an unshakable shadow. He spoke, his voice strangely gentle, saying he only wanted to ensure she was all right. Those simple words pierced the darkness in her heart like a faint ray of light, leaving her torn between anger and a new, undefined feeling. But then, another truth stunned Claire, like a cold gust sweeping through the hospital corridor. A nurse, while discussing medical bills, inadvertently revealed that Alexander had quietly covered all her father's treatment costs for months, despite once vowing never to forgive Robert Thompson. This revelation was like a blade, not one that wounded, but one that shattered the wall she had built between them. Claire looked at Alexander, her eyes blurring with tears, her heart racing as she asked why he would do this for the man he despised. He stared at the floor, his broad shoulders trembling slightly, and when he answered, his voice was hoarse, laden with pain. "I didn't want you to lose him, like I lost my mother." That confession was an earthquake, crumbling the icy barrier between them, revealing an Alexander not as a cold avenger, but as a man scarred by loss. Claire felt her heart melt, not with love, but with an unexpected connection, an invisible thread linking two people who had once been enemies. She stepped forward, her legs trembling, and touched his arm, feeling his warmth for the first time. The gesture was small, but it carried the weight of forgiveness, of understanding. In the hospital corridor, under the stark white light, Alexander drew her into his arms, and Claire, for the first time, let herself dissolve. Her tears soaked his shirt, each drop a fragment of anger, pain, and the faint glimmer of hope. She was no longer his prisoner, no longer a pawn in his revenge. In that fragile moment, they were two broken souls, finding each other amidst the wreckage of their past. She clutched the pearl necklace, its coolness a reminder of her mother's strength, of the family love she carried within. Alexander wasn't the man she loved, but in his embrace, she felt a new light, a possibility that they could transcend the shadows of their past. Moonlight filtered through the hospital window, casting a silver glow over the corridor, a silent witness to the moment Claire's heart began to open, if only slightly, to the man who had once been her enemy. She knew the road ahead was still fraught with challenges, but in this fleeting instant, she was no longer fighting alone. The next morning, dawn's light filtered through the towering glass windows of Alexander Knight's office, casting a soft golden glow over the room. But it couldn't dispel the icy weight of truth pressing down on Claire Thompson's heart. She stood before him in the opulent space, surrounded by ebony bookshelves and a gleaming desk, where every detail radiated power and control. But today, Claire was no prisoner of that gilded cage. She stood tall, her eyes blazing with fierce determination, like a flame that had smoldered within her from the start now erupting into an unquenchable wildfire. The truth about her father, his role in the collapse of Alexander's family, had been exposed to the public by Victor Grayson, Alexander's rival, turning her family into a target of disgrace. But Claire was no longer the trembling bride in the chapel's wedding gown. She had endured too much: sacrifice, betrayal, and the fragile moment in the hospital corridor, to stand here, ready to reclaim her family's honor. Claire's heart pounded, each beat a reminder of what she had lost, and what she still had to protect. She thought of her father, lying frail but alive in the hospital, and of Michael, her younger brother, who needed her to be stronger than ever. She thought of her mother, Elizabeth, and the pearl necklace now resting cool against her neck, a talisman guiding her path. "You are stronger than you think," her mother had said, and Claire clung to those words, letting them steer her through the fear roaring within. She looked at Alexander, the man who had once been her enemy, who had bound her to a marriage rooted in revenge, yet who had also quietly paid her father's medical bills. In his eyes, she caught a fleeting glint of admiration, as if he were seeing a new Claire, no longer the passive girl he once knew. She spoke, her voice steady as steel, declaring that Victor Grayson was behind the leak, and that she wanted to hold a press conference to set the truth straight. She needed his help, not as a contractual wife, but as an ally. As Claire adjusted Alexander's tie, an instinctive yet intimate gesture, her fingers brushed his hand, sending a jolt through her, making her heart skip. The act, small but significant, caught them both off guard, as if they had crossed an invisible line. Alexander nodded, his deep voice resonating, agreeing to do it her way, and in that moment, Claire felt a new thread of connection between them. Not love, but a growing respect. She left the office, her heart racing, not only from the pressure of the battle ahead, but also from the strange realization that, for the first time, she and Alexander stood on the same side. The press conference unfolded in a grand hall, where light from chandeliers glared down like blades, and a crowd of reporters sat below, pens poised to capture every moment. Claire stood at the podium, her heart pounding so fiercely she feared it might shatter. The gazes of dozens of strangers pierced her pride like needles, but she gripped the pearl necklace, its coolness a reminder of her mother's strength. She drew a deep breath, and as she began to speak, her voice was clear, powerful, like a river breaking through a dam. She acknowledged her father's mistakes, not hiding the truth that he had contributed to the Knight family's downfall. But she also spoke of Alexander, how he had secretly covered her father's medical expenses, despite vowing never to forgive him. Her words were not a defense, but a portrait of compassion, of human complexity, and of a man who was not the vengeful figure the press portrayed. She turned to Alexander, standing beside her, and caught the surprise in his eyes, as if he hadn't expected her to defend him before the world. He stepped to the podium, his presence commanding like a storm, yet his voice, when it rang out, was warm and sincere. He spoke of Claire, how she had shown him the meaning of fighting for family, and that he was proud to stand by her. His words stirred Claire's heart, not with love, but with a fresh sense of empathy, a feeling that they had become a team, if only for this moment. The crowd fell silent, then erupted with questions, camera shutters snapping like rain. But Claire heard none of it. She felt only Alexander's hand clasping hers, the firm grip carrying a silent promise that they were no longer enemies. As camera flashes lit up the room, Claire felt the pearl necklace against her throat warm, as if her mother were smiling from some distant place. She had faced the truth, not just to protect her family's honor, but to prove she was more than a victim of fate. Alexander, with his steadfast grip, was proof that even the deepest scars could heal. Moonlight streamed through the hall's windows, bathing them in a silver glow, a silent witness to the moment Claire found the strength to rise, not only for her father, but for herself. A year later, on the balcony of Alexander Knight's penthouse, a full moon hung high in the Boston sky, casting a gentle silver glow, as if silently blessing the journey Claire Thompson had endured. She stood there, in a soft white dress of her own choosing, its delicate fabric embracing her like a whisper of freedom. No longer the unfamiliar wedding gown of their first ceremony, nor an ornament in someone else's design. This dress was hers, a symbol of a Claire who had reclaimed herself. The night breeze caressed her skin, carrying the salty tang of the distant ocean, and in that moment, her heart swelled with a peace she once thought she'd never find. Moonlight illuminated the pearl necklace around her neck, her mother's final gift, like a guiding beacon, reminding her of the trials she had overcome and the strength she had discovered within. Earlier that day, in the small chapel on the outskirts of Boston, the same place that had once witnessed the hollow vows of a marriage bound by vengeance, Claire had walked down the aisle, hand in hand with her father, Robert. He was healthy now, his shoulders no longer bowed by shame but lifted with pride as he gazed at his daughter. His smile, though faint, was a precious gift, proof that Claire's sacrifices had not been in vain. Michael, her younger brother, stood in the front row, his grin radiant like summer sunlight, his eyes sparkling with joy at seeing his sister find happiness. And Alexander, the man who had once been her enemy, stood at the altar, his deep blue eyes no longer cold but shimmering like a lake under moonlight, brimming with genuine love. As he took her hand, his vow was not a contract, but a promise from the heart, a pledge for a shared future where they would heal the scars of their past together. Now, on the balcony, Claire felt Alexander's hand entwined tightly with hers, his grip strong yet tender, like an anchor in a sea of emotions. She looked at him, her heart stirring as she recalled their journey, from the days she was a prisoner in a gilded cage, to the moment he shielded her from Victor Grayson, and then the unexpected embrace in the cold hospital corridor. Each step, each scar, had led them here, where moonlight bathed a love forged from the ashes of revenge. He whispered, his voice low and melodic, that she had said, that she had shown him a love that was the greatest strength. His words touched her soul, melting the last remnants of ice within. Tears glistened on her lashes, not from pain but from overwhelming joy, like a river breaking free after years of restraint. She smiled, her fingers brushing the pearl necklace, its coolness a reminder of her mother, of lessons in honor and honor, love. "You've given me a true family," she replied, her voice trembling but brimming with emotion. Those words were not just a confession, but a profound truth, an affirmation that Alexander, once a man consumed by anger, had become her safe haven, her love. They stood there beneath the moonlight, and as he drew her into a kiss, the world around them seemed to dissolve. The kiss was more than a meeting of lips. It was a fusion of two once shattered hearts, a promise to face all future trials together. His warmth enveloped her, banishing the chill of the nights she had felt so alone in this penthouse. She thought of her mother, her father, of Michael, and of the journey she had shaped her, from a woman bound by family duty to a woman who found the strength to face the truth and build a new future. He was not just her partner. He was living proof that even the deepest wounds could heal, that love could sprout from the fragments of a broken past. She recalled the moonlit nights that had witnessed her pain, from the frigid chapel to the hospital corridor. And now, that same moonlight illuminated a moment of pure happiness. It was not just a silent witness, but a steadfast companion, reminding her that light always lingered, even in the darkest hours. As they stood there, hand in hand, Claire felt her heart overflow, not from the penthouse's grandeur or Alexander's power, but from the love they had built together. From the ashes of vengeance, they had planted something enduring, a love strong enough to mend broken hearts. The full moon still hung high, draping them in a silver glow, like a blessing for the future they would write together, day by day, moment by moment, under the light of love. And you, my dear audience, brace yourselves for the next twist in this jaw-dropping story. So, before you get too cozy, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you're truly loving what I'm doing here. And drop a comment below letting me know where you're watching from and what time it is for you. It's always a thrill to see who's joining us from all corners of the globe.